Drug-eluting stents are used to open clogged heart arteries. A bioabsorbable stent with the same drug as Abbott's Xience V stent is inserted into the coronary artery mounted on a balloon. The balloon is inflated to reopen the blocked vessel. Drugs on stents are designed to prevent inflammation and to prevent tissue regrowth into the stent. Unlike conventional metallic stents, a bioabsorbable stent is not a permanent implant and will be slowly absorbed by the body. Over time, the vessel heals and the stent begins to be absorbed. The outward force that the stent exerts on the vessel wall is reduced. The molecules released as the stent dissolves are naturally broken down by the body. Eventually, the stent, polymer, and drug are completely absorbed by the body.
In 1993, Eli Lilly decided that it would focus on its pharma and other related businesses. The medical devices division was spun off and went public in late 1994 under the name of Guidant. The new company focused on cardiac rhythm management and cardiac and vascular intervention products via coronary and peripheral stents, guidewires, and balloon dilatation catheters. Johnson & Johnson announced that it was acquiring Guidant on December 15, 2004 for $76 a share at a cost of $25.4 billion. The deal was approved by Guidant stockholders on April 27, 2005. Unfortunately, on May 25th, Guidant reported 26 cases of implantable defibrillator failure, including one death that resulted in large safety concerns, the discontinuation of 4 models, and ultimately an issued warning for 9 different models of pacemakers. On October 18th, Johnson & Johnson gave an announcement that they were exploring alternatives to the acquisition, followed by a November 2nd warning that they might pull out of the deal due to the regulatory issues and legal liabilities. On November 7, 2005, Guidant sued Johnson & Johnson to force them to complete the deal. On January 11, 2006, Johnson & Johnson presented a counteroffer of $23.2 billion, still less than their original 2004 bid, which the Guidant board accepted. It was not until January 17th that Boston Scientific produced a new offer of $27 billion with the help of Abbott Labs. Abbott agreed to purchase $1.4 billion of Boston Scientific stock and pay $4.1 billion for Guidant's vascular intervention business upon completion of the merger. Without Abbott's financial assistance, it would have been unlikely that Boston Scientific could have produced the counteroffer. On April 21, 2006, the deal with Boston Scientific was complete. This deal included Abbott Labs buying the vascular intervention business of Guidant for approximately $4.5 billion, renaming the division to Abbott Vascular. Abbott's Vascular is a global leader in cardiac and vascular care, with cutting-edge devices within their pipeline for coronary artery, peripheral vascular, carotid artery, and structural heart disease. Their flagship product is Xience V stent, and other notable products in their portfolio are bare metal stents, catheters, guidewires, and vessel closure devices. The clinical study begins with the development of a protocol. A protocol in draft is reviewed by a clinical committee that includes representatives from all core functional clinical areas: biostats, clinical science, clinical safety, clinical operations, and clinical project management. At a very high level, a clinical trial for medical devices begins with the planning phase, which includes the development and approval of a protocol. Once the protocol is approved, a clinical project manager from the clinical project management team is assigned to execute the trial according to the protocol's specifications. The clinical project manager will work with the clinical operations teams to review and select sites for the trial based on the site's previous experiences on past trials with the sponsor and its technical and functional capabilities. In parallel, the data management and clinical programming group will coordinate to configure both EDC and CTMS systems and the eTMF and other related trial integrations necessary to prep internal systems to begin collation of patient data. Once the sites are selected, the clinical operations teams, consisting of both in-house and field CRAs, initiate chosen sites to prep them for study execution. This is followed by training at the site. After the sites are initiated, sites are now ready to proceed with enrollment, screen for potential patients, perform procedures to implant the medical devices, and monitor the patient's progress throughout the life cycle of the study. Throughout the trial, clinical safety will work to monitor adverse events as they arise, and more importantly, assess whether or not reported adverse events are a product experience based on the product of the sponsor. In parallel, the data management organization will clean trial data for duplicates and errors, and prep the data for biannual and annual status updates to the FDA and other regulatory reporting bodies in OUS regions. A medical device trial ranges from 3 to 5 years based on the requirements of the protocol and what is actually being proved. As the trial comes to a close, CRAs will work to close out sites and collate any remaining documents. Data managers will clean all data, and the biostatisticians will analyze and prep the data to be handed to regulatory affairs to be reported to the FDA. On October 19, 2011, Abbott Laboratories publicly announced their decision to split the organization into two completely separate entities, one focused on diagnostics and medical device, and the other based on research-based pharmaceuticals. Abbott's organization is structured as a multi-divisional structure in which each product division is given its own set of support functions: HR, finance, marketing, sales, and R&D. Earlier this year, on January 1, 2013, Abbott officially separated into two leading publicly traded companies: a diversified medical products company, Abbott, and a research-based pharmaceutical company called AbbVie. The two companies will benefit from having distinct investment identities based on their very different business models and markets. That diversified medical products company will consist of Abbott's established pharmaceutical, diagnostic, devices, nutritional, and animal health businesses, a portfolio with about $22 billion in sales this past year. AbbVie's research-based pharmaceutical company will be composed solely of Abbott's current proprietary pharmaceutical business, a nearly $18 billion business this past year. Within most R&D functions of healthcare companies exists a clinical research organization, whose primary objective is to run clinical trials. Currently, Abbott Vascular has the second largest clinical research organization within Abbott, and faces significant organizational challenges in terms of standardizing clinical trial management processes across geographies, global adoption of enterprise-wide clinical systems and solutions for improved trial management efficiency. The focus of our analysis and recommendations will revolve around Abbott Vascular's worldwide clinical research organization.
In 2007, after Abbott bought the vascular division of Guidant, the worldwide clinical research group was split into two distinct product divisions, endovascular and coronary. The endovascular division, which developed products specifically for the lower portion of the body, maintained its product division structure. Each of the project managers had its own dedicated team of scientists, field clinical research associates, data managers, and worldwide clinical solutions. Each of these teams supported a specific trial. The coronary division maintained a functional structure. The clinical ops, project management, and science were the main functions in which the division was structured. These resources were shared across multiple clinical trials, enabling knowledge sharing between the trials. This also increased flexibility, as resources could be reallocated with few integration problems. There were several challenges with the structure. As Abbott grew, there was a significant crisis of control. There was a constant battle for resources between the two product divisions, coronary and endovascular. Within the endovascular division, each of the individual project managers would also battle for resources and funding. Since the project managers and teams were assigned to only one clinical trial, they often would form an escalation of commitment. Each project manager would try to protect and further its clinical trials without taking notice of what other clinical trials were going on and where else resources could be committed. The endovascular division was mechanistic in nature, and the decision-making was centralized and determined by top management. There was very little coordination between project managers, which created inefficiencies within the organization. It was clear that the endovascular division needed to change in order to respond to the competitive and political forces of change in order to become a market leader. While the endovascular division struggled to succeed, the coronary division proved to be extremely successful. The coronary division's clinical research team was able to gather the data quickly. Since the FDA approval process is painstakingly slow, quickly completing clinical trials and submitting the data to the FDA for review is essential to getting products on the market. Part of the reason for coronary's market success was attributed to the functional structure.
To help resolve some of the problems after the Guidant acquisition, upper management targeted a revolutionary organizational change. They needed to remove the mechanistic tall structure that endovascular had. Modeling after the success of the coronary division, management decided to integrate both endovascular and coronary departments, adopting coronary's organizational structure. By doing so, that allowed for high standardization within all clinical operations, and at the same time, it decentralized decision-making for each functional group. It also eliminated empire building within each one of the PMs. Lastly, cost savings was incurred from headcount reduction. There was also resistance to change, especially from the endovascular division. Literally, they were disbanded and absorbed into coronaries. To help with this change, the VP of Worldwide Clinical Research planned together with each one of the directors to get their opinion on how to implement and prepare themselves for such a change. In reality, though, the method used to implement this was coercion. Everybody had to go along with the plan or they had to leave. In some cases, there were some employees that left shortly after this change was implemented. Lastly, there was a Total Quality Management, or TQM, which was launched to help ensure the overall quality of the trials. For example, a clinical quality organization was formed to monitor CIDs, otherwise known as continuous improvement detection. As part of the business strategy of Abbott Vascular, Abbott began to expand globally, establishing clinical trial teams in Japan, EMEA, which includes Europe, Middle East and Africa, and Asia, otherwise known as Asia-Pac. One of the large drivers to go global was because of the stringent regulations from the US FDA on the requirements for clinical trials. Conducting trials in other countries, which have more relaxed regulations, allow for the trials to be completed in a shorter time frame. Ultimately, this means the time to market would be shorter. Abbott Vascular, by going global, is now encountering new organizational problems. Standardization is once again a major issue as there are different reporting and specification regulations. For example, even though the fundamentals of running a clinical trial is the same, the data management system between EMEA is very different than in the US. Knowledge transfer then becomes difficult and cumbersome, creating delays in product releases. Similar to the days where endovascular was a separate product division, regional empire building is starting to occur as well, this time with the heads of each global region. If regional empire building is allowed to grow to the extent where they exert severe power control, the headquarters will lose touch of what is actually happening around the globe. Ultimately, this will decrease the effectiveness of Abbott Vascular to deal with the external forces of change.
In order to further streamline the operational structure of worldwide clinical research, we're proposing changes to people, processes, and systems. Under the people bucket, we propose to restructure regional trial teams into consolidated worldwide functional areas. We also recommend the formation of a worldwide clinical TQM team. For the process bucket, we believe that a cross-functional task force should be formed to standardize data, process, documentation, and regulatory reporting standards. Finally, under the system bucket, the organization can benefit from adopting standard information system applications for running global trials, specifically EDC, electronic data capture, CTMS, clinical trial management systems, and eTMF, electronic trial master file. The organizational chart shown here represents what we believe to be the optimal setup for the worldwide clinical research organization. As mentioned previously, we have restructured regional trial teams into consolidated functional areas that span worldwide geographies. We've also created the role of regional directors who are responsible for effective coordination and integration of functional roles and processes per regional regulatory requirements. Finally, a worldwide clinical TQM team has been formed to drive the TQM process across the entire clinical research organization. In order to effectively drive standardization across the entire organization, a cross-functional task force has been formed with key stakeholders and subject matter experts. This task force will work to implement standards across geographies and will also drive adoption of existing information technology solutions across multiple geographies.
In summary, our proposed changes will decentralize decision-making and empower functional groups, create an organic and adaptive culture to address global clinical trial needs, standardize processes and systems across multiple geographies, and expand adoption of clinical information systems technology.
And grab yourself a beverage or hop if you wanna just bounce to my leverage. The evidence, as they say, is in the pudding. So show me the money like my name was Cuba Gooding. It ain't fool's gold, it's gold, fool. Can't stop, won't stop, keeping it old school. So cool. Big Spoon is my nom de plume. I keep it popping like a needle in a new balloon. And if you don't know by now, then you need more schooling. Let loose, kid, get stupid. Got more flavor than I know what to do. It's to get your hands up if you're part of the movement and bump to the baseline. I made it rock before your phone had FaceTime. Yes, sirree, you know my steez. I stay fresh to death like I'm drowning in Febreze.